All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a massive, frankly unprecedented, systemic shift that's happening right now in how the internet actually polices itself. For years, we relied on this highly centralized, top-down system to verify online information. But today, we're literally witnessing the dawn of a completely different model. Let's jump right in.
If you're a digital safety regulator, a policy researcher, or maybe a social media strategist tuning in, I want to pose a really high-stakes dilemma straight to you. How do you police the internet when the fact-checkers actually lose their funding? Because, folks, it's not some hypothetical scenario anymore. It's the exact reality our global information ecosystem is facing today. To make sense of this new reality, here's our roadmap. We'll start with the collapse of centralized moderation, then cover the rise of decentralized crowd-checking and the whole psychology behind peer pressure. After that, we'll weigh the balance of free speech, see how the surviving fact-checkers are leveraging AI, and finally, look at the very real limits of relying on the crowd.
Okay, part one, the collapse of centralized moderation, which is basically the end of top-down verification. To understand where we are right now, we've got to look at the sheer political and financial headwinds that have just battered traditional verification groups recently. And this collapse, it happened fast. In 2023, the Murphy v. Missouri case brought some really severe legal scrutiny down on how governments were communicating with platforms about moderation. Then, by 2024, the Stanford Internet Observatory, which was this huge misinformation research hub, they were forced to shed staff because of mounting legal fees. And the real tipping point hit in January 2025, when Meta just completely withdrew its U.S. fact-checking funding.
So what's the fallout of that rapid timeline? Well, today, a staggering 76% of traditional verification groups are either financially vulnerable or in an outright crisis. Between the loss of federal assistance and the massive pullback of platform funding, it has left a massive, gaping moderation vacuum.
Which brings us to part two, the rise of crowd-checking, or decentralized moderation. Because hey, nature abhors a vacuum, and trust me, so does the internet. As institutional funding dried up, platforms had to pivot. Take X, formerly Twitter, for example. When they laid off 80% of their traditional moderation staff, they replaced those experts with, well, us. They shifted entirely to a decentralized, user-driven system.
Now, you might be wondering, how on earth do you stop a user-driven system from just turning into an absolute mob? The answer is the bridging algorithm. Instead of just counting up upvotes like a popularity contest, a bridging algorithm requires cross-partisan consensus. For a public correction note to get approved, it actually needs agreement from users who have historically disagreed in their past rating histories. It's a really clever way to actively prevent partisan bias or coordinated groups from just gaming the whole system.
So mechanically, it plays out like this. First, a user proposes some context for a post they think is inaccurate. Then, that note is evaluated by other contributors, and it's got to hit a specific mathematical threshold, specifically a 0.4 helpfulness score. That's when the bridging algorithm steps in to ensure the consensus is genuinely diverse, not just some echo chamber nodding along with itself. Only after all of that is the note publicly appended to the post.
Okay, so those are the mechanics, but why does this actually change user behavior? Let's get into part three, peer pressure and reputation, and the incredible power of community signals. Honestly, this is the absolute climax of our explainer today. Why does a bottom-up system work so well without the platform having to use direct, top-down censorship?
The secret lies in this one absolutely crucial statistic from researchers over at the University of Rochester: 32%. Get this, when a public community note gets slapped onto a post, the original authors are 32% more likely to just voluntarily delete their own misleading content. They aren't being censored by the platform. They are literally choosing to take it down themselves.
And the reason they remove it? Because the crowd effectively kills the post's virality. The moment a note hits, engagement drops off a cliff. Reposts plunge by 46%, likes drop by 44%. The algorithm and the community signal basically combine to ensure that once the crowd has spoken, the spread of that misinformation hits a total brick wall.
The real driver here, it all comes down to reputation. The University of Rochester researchers pointed out that authors worry it's going to hurt their online reputation if others find their information misleading. This is the reputation effect, live and in action. Public notes act as this glaring, neon signal of untrustworthiness to an author's audience. Influencers, especially those with verified checkmarks who rely on their clout, they feel immense peer influence and reputational pressure to retract those inaccurate posts super quickly, just to salvage their credibility.
For all the policy strategists tuning in, this brings us perfectly to part four,
balancing free speech, or nudging instead of censoring. We really need to analyze how this structural shift from top-down to bottom-up actually solves some major legal friction points.
When you stack these two models up against each other, the legal implications are night and day. Top-down moderation relies on the platform removing content, which, as we've seen, creates severe First Amendment friction, sparks accusations of government coercion, and leads to massive lawsuits. On the flip side, bottom-up crowd-checking relies on community consensus and voluntary author retraction. It nudges user behavior instead of explicitly silencing it.
Because of this totally different dynamic, researchers are noting that crowd-checking strikes a real balance between protecting First Amendment rights and the urgent need to curb misinformation. It fosters a much more civic online information ecosystem. It's increasingly seen as a highly sustainable alternative that maintains platform credibility without having to resort to direct platform censorship.
But what about the professionals who used to do all this? Let's shift gears to part 5. Fact-checkers adapt with AI, and look at how they are actually surviving these brutal financial headwinds. Despite their budget shrinking and facing severe staff cuts, global fact-checkers are soldiering on. The International Fact-Checking Network is actually reporting massive growth in audience engagement for these groups. It just goes to show that the demand for professional, neutral verification is still incredibly high, and it's essential for building resilience against our constantly changing political landscapes.
But honestly, their financial vulnerability right now cannot be overstated. Look at this. Before 2025, over a third of these organizations relied on Meta for more than half of their entire income. So when that funding was pulled back in the US, it sent absolute shockwaves through the industry. They were forced to evolve, and fast.
To survive, they're getting creative. Today, exactly half of these organizations are utilizing formal artificial intelligence guidelines. They're using AI for automated data gathering and translating workflows just to do more with less. And on top of that, nearly 55% are expanding into short-form video. They're jumping into WhatsApp, starting podcasts, basically trying to reach audiences right where the misinformation is thriving.
All right, but let's be real, we have to address the critical limitations here. Which brings us to our final section, Part 6, the limits of consensus and the vulnerabilities in crowdsourcing. Because if you're a policy researcher, you have to maintain a balanced, clear-eyed evaluation of crowd-checking. It's not a silver bullet. The bridging algorithm actually has a major flaw. It's called the paradox of consensus. The system works wonderfully for lifestyle, trivia, and soft news, which makes up about 52% of successful notes. People can easily agree that, no, a certain celebrity didn't actually wear that crazy dress. But for high-stakes, hard politics, only 22%. Highly controversial political falsehoods rarely get notes because polarized raters just dig their heels in and block the cross-partisan consensus needed to publish the correction. And then there's the speed issue. The median delay to actually get a public note attached to a post is over 15 hours. During fast-moving emergencies, like the 2024 hurricanes, for instance, average delays hit 46 hours. We all know misinformation goes viral in minutes. If a correction takes 2 days to appear, it leaves massive, incredibly dangerous information vacuums right when people need facts the most.
And bad actors know this. These delays create systemic vulnerabilities that get exploited. Reports are showing that foreign influence operations, like AI-driven botnets, are actively exploiting these exact algorithmic blind spots. They use AI-generated personas and hyper-realistic deepfakes to push coordinated, inauthentic behavior way faster than a decentralized group of human peers can ever hope to fact-check them.
Which leaves us with one final, pretty provocative thought. We've seen today how the reputation effect can successfully nudge influencers to delete bad information. It truly does offer a sustainable alternative to centralized, top-down censorship. But as coordinated, AI-driven operations evolve and get faster every single day, is decentralized peer feedback alone truly enough to protect our global information ecosystem? That right there is the defining policy dilemma of our time. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and remember, keep questioning what you see online.